and welcome to Community Matters. It's lovely to see you again today. I've got a really interesting guest with me today. Now, he's a man who seems to know everything that's going on in Felixstowe, so that's going to be very interesting. He's an ardent campaigner for good causes. He's wearing his medal today, so I'm sure he'll tell us about that. And you know, a man that, if there was a Guinness Book of Records for somebody who attends lots and lots of meetings, I suspect he might be the winner. So I'd love to introduce you to Mike Nimmy. Good morning, Mike.
Morning, how are you doing?
Thank you very much for coming here today.
Well, through the rain and the snow and the mist.
I know, I was in a t-shirt and back in jumpers now.
Yeah, you see, I mean, it's spring though, it's coming.
It's coming, it's around. Now, I'd love to know, first of all these meetings that you go to, what motivated you? Why do you do it?
Well, if one wants to maintain a long marriage, it's best that you spend a quality of time apart. So that may be, well, you know, coming into 40 years.
Was that an official
No, not really.
suggestion?
It was just something that flipped into my mind. No, I think the...
you have an understanding wife, is that what you're saying?
Well, family sort of say, why aren't you doing this, this and this, and why are you going there, there? And it is a pressure, and it's a pressure actually experienced by lots of folk who are doing things, be they elected or unelected, be they promoting a scheme or otherwise. Anybody who's doing a charity or fundraising or supporting a cause, you make a choice, don't you? You either go down the pub and have a few, or you go and do something else, or whatever. It's time isn't limitless, is it? So you've got it. But I got sucked into the system. I was persuaded to stand as a town and district councillor back in 2003. And that was at the point where the health service, particularly here in Suffolk Coastal, was being changed very markedly.
Right.
And I was
Is that what drove you?
Well, I was persuaded by a fellow councillor to go to a meeting of the folks who called the shots on what our health service would be like and how it would be reconfigurated at a meeting at St Felix here in Felixstowe, at which John Gummer, who was then the MP, was also involved. And we were involved because of commitments that had been made by this particular board that was then responsible for delivering healthcare with us, that actually it was a policy they introduced called A Fresher Future for Felixstowe. And it all sounded good stuff, so we thought, well, we'd better go along and see exactly what it is they're promising our folk, because having been elected, then that was an area that I was interested in.
Yes. We didn't get to that bit.
Yes, so I was elected in 2003.
Oh, congratulations.
And spat out in 2010.
You had quite a 7-year.
Well, 8. Yes, it was a long session actually.
And knowing you and your commitment to things, I bet that took up a lot of your time.
Well, yes, the family didn't see a great deal of me. But I mean, my sort of interests were health, housing, education, the resort, sport, that sort of broadband quality of life things. So
for Felixstowe?
Well, for Felixstowe and the wider district, but because of the health changes, I got inveigled to Save Our Hospital Action Group here in Felixstowe. So along with people like Roy Gray and Peter Meller, and Dr. Janet Matthey and others, we devoted a lot of time in gathering lots of evidence on why the service that we had, which we'd inherited from our forefathers, was good, gave a good quality of health care. And the proposals which changed radically when we had a change in the funding formula and a new chief executive needed fighting. Well, we had somebody...
Did you win?
No.
No,
the community.
Does anybody win?
Well, we don't know. Perhaps we lost less than we thought we may have done. Had we not fought, we may not now have a community hospital that we have. We may not have retained the minor injuries unit that we have. We may not have the number of relatively up-to-date surgeries that we have.
So you were a success.
Well, you don't know. You never do know, do you? What would have been the alternative if you'd rode over and played dead? You never know what may have happened because what's happened's happened.
So many small hospitals have been closed throughout the country.
Yes,
so
they have.
I think that's a success. There's hundreds of small hospitals closed.
They have.
In preference for the large hospitals in a town, and I've seen that, and the queues that go with it.
Yeah, I mean we've got if we drop back to 2003, the then government took it into its mind that it would be far better off having much more localised healthcare. So it created 303 primary care trusts who were given the money, decided how they could spend it on the healthcare in the area that they represented. And for us, that was the Suffolk coastal area, which was contiguous with the district council that I also sat on. So it made, that fitted.
Did that start in 2003 then?
That started in 2002, 1st of April.
So when
April
you were
Fool's
elected,
Day,
you were actually in at the beginning of
pretty much, yeah. But we were at the point where the incoming new organisation thought that it could do a lot more with the assets and resources that it had than subsequently they found that they could. Because one of the big weaknesses of the 303 structures were that the number of financial bodies who were capable of running the budgets and were in very short supply. And in very short order, a lot of them became very indebted. Really? Very indebted. Oh. But the other thing that happened, and this was a policy at central government and the Leeds Advisory Group, was that to get more health equality across the nation, the funding formula, which takes in something like 30-odd component parts, needed to be adjusted. And we suffered as a result of that adjustment because they removed the proportion that we got as a result of the demographic of your community. If you had more elderly folk, you got a higher proportion of money. Oh. We also lost the sums that we were given as a consequence of being a very rural community. That was also cut back.
But Ipswich isn't rural, is it?
But we weren't a part of Ipswich at that point. That point. Right. And you've really got to sort of track this thing as it checks, because it's a changing picture all the time. And what you will find with central government particularly, they like big. And I mean, at one point, I think there's a view being expressed that they would really be happy if they could grow pretty much all medical care to be delivered at Birmingham and close down everything else.
Birmingham? Oh, you're joking.
No, I'm not. We are now deemed to be a part of the Birmingham, East Midlands, whatever. We are now.
Really?
Yes, it's huge.
How mad.
Well, it is mad, but not if you're an accountant. If you're a clinician, it's mad. If you're a patient, it's mad. Yeah. If you're a surgeon, probably it's mad. But yeah, you've met centralising, give us the power and whatever. You've met them, haven't you, in your life? Yeah. And they're all of the view, well, if we could just make it bigger, it'll be much more efficient. And what we know, don't we, is it can be equally inefficient, whether it's big or small.
Well, it
depends on the structure and the people.
So I see Felixstowe as a success. You've still got your small hospital. You've got the
16 beds,
which it's still there. I've known so many local ones go, and you've got your big hospital for your for different. I can't think of the word.
What, the services?
Yeah, the services are
well, we've got Ipswich District Hospital, which has been our district hospital for time immemorial. 1834, I think it kicked off. But
you've done well. I think you've done well then.
Yes, we'll never know what we may or may not have lost had we not fought. But there was.
You know what you've got.
Well, we do, and what we do know is that there isn't really enough of it for the demand that we have today, and there certainly won't be enough of it for the demand we'll have in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, and. The thing that we now have, and you may be aware, there was a major change in how the health service would be managed and delivered when the coalition government came into power, despite not actually telling all of us nothing would change,
I
which
know.
is quite upsetting. So what we now have is a major change in the way that the money, and this is what we always need to concentrate on, is who receives the money and who's responsible for spending it. And what we now have, instead of having primary care trusts, which are made up of accountants, lawyers, it could be anybody that a board, an anointing board selected, with 2 or 3 clinicians, we now have a thing called a clinical commissioning group, who is predominantly clinicians. So we now actually have people who day to day are delivering that service.
Oh, that's really good.
A high proportion of GPs who are the sort of the end, see both ends of the sending and the coming back. They are now responsible for spending the money.
So I think you're really up to date on everything because of the meetings you go to. You know more, I think, than most people do, unless it's reported, because you're really there at the meetings and see what's happening.
Well, yeah,
what do you do with your information? Because it's all good stuff.
We make it available on Grumps. We do
Tell me about Grumps.
Well, your sister organisation, Grumps. I mean,
several
years ago, when I ceased to be a district councillor, I was doing a thing called tabs, which was keeping tabs on things and people. And the current manager here, Mike Amos, very kindly came and covered that for Felixstowe TV.
Oh, right.
And from that, the sort
Mike's
of
been around then.
well, forever, ever and a day. But the point was, there was lots of information there on both health, on housing, on sports, on the resort, on the dock. I mean, as a you know, if you've been elected, then you've seen a huge amount of stuff over a period of 8 years, and most of it goes into the security shredder. But I thought perhaps as much of that could be shared should be shared. So that really became the focus of tying into Felixstowe TV, and to a lesser or greater bit into Felixstowe Radio.
Well, you're going on to Felixstowe Radio when you've left here today.
Yes, I will. For my sins, and that will be a much more round-robin bit, because quite a lot is actually happening in the resort, or perhaps not happening in the resort.
Oh, anything that you can share with us?
Well, you know, if we look at other resorts getting ready for the season, we look at Southwold, for instance, they're opening a superb tea room on their lake, which will be, you know, it will also give a nice place, another place to visit, but it will be creating a number of jobs within the tea room, etc., etc. And other resorts seem to make a better fist of staying a resort and providing things for people to bother to come and see it, you know. And
Felixstowe is gorgeous. I love it.
Yes, you might, but if you'd been here 10 years ago, you'd have had a lot more to do. You'd have had a lot more food. You'd have had a lot more hotels, guest houses. It's been, I mean, it was said to me several years ago, certainly back in the early 2000, that Felixstowe was becoming progressively a port town and not a resort. And I think then that was an estate agent, and they know who's coming in and who's going out, and they have a better, and I think sadly both of those well-known estate agents, their opinion is probably about right.
Right, you don't see a change in that. I see
National
Lottery are doing work on the front there, you know.
Well, I suppose, but how long behind is all of that? I mean, that's just endemic with the way our system works. A real problem we have is 40 years ago this year, they did a massive reorganisation of local government, and up to that time, Felixstowe was totally responsible for itself. It was an urban district council. It was then amalgamated with Woodbridge and the hinterland in the rural area, and that really has worked against the interest of Felixstowe. Because there's a term you will meet, and it's quite a damaging term. You know, philosophically it sounds superb. It's equality of provision.
The quality of...
No, the equality of.
The equality of provision. So you're saying Felixstowe doesn't get its fair share?
No, what I'm saying is if you happen to live in Yoxford or Middleton or even Wickham Market, You may look to Felixstowe and it's got sports facilities, it's got swimming pool, did have a theatre, did have all these things. They don't have those. Why should Felixstowe have it? Therefore, we won't support investment in those things because we don't have them. So that's how it works. It works backhandedly, not whatever. You don't look to try to persuade, say, a whole Olympic-sized swimming pool at Yoxford or something. So that's the way that the first tier of serious decision making for us impacts on us, because you know, the Spa Theatre has not been actually been effectively invested in since it was put out to private contracts 17, 18 years ago.
Oh, and such a shame to see that
yeah.
Have you heard anything about that? It's such a
demolition seems to be the order of the day.
What do you think they'll do there?
Well, I think if you look at the way local government is going, one of the big areas that central government can save money is by withholding money from local government. They've been doing that for the last, 3 or 4 years. And it looks like they'll continue to do it. And local government, because they're politicians, will continually tell you and I that they can continue to provide this wonderful service, if not improve it, and they'll make all these wonderful services from back office working and. That can only go on so far, and I think they went past that being true several years ago. Because you go to most local councils now, the probability of finding somebody who you can deal with your problem gets less and less.
Really?
Oh yeah, there are very few people. They're hollowed out shells, really.
Because you know the councillors, you go to the council meetings.
Yes.
Do you see any hope? I mean, you're painting a very black
honest.
picture.
No, it's an honest one.
No. Honest picture. Can you see any hope there? Can you see any development?
Well, I don't know. I think as people, we've become much more disconnected from our political process, haven't we? I mean, if we look at the figures of people who take part, even bother to find 10 minutes to go and put a cross in a box, those numbers drop and drop and drop.
Really?
And I mean, what is a little sad, I think, is if we look at the play going into the next general election, a lot of the parties are looking to ensure that they keep the grey vote alongside. And the reason for that is we actually vote. The kids who shout a lot, run about a lot, we're told we really must make every effort to get them engaged, don't. And the reason they end up with, you know, high youth unemployment, etc., is they don't use their political power, do they?
Why haven't you gone to be elected again? Why haven't you gone?
Well,
down
no,
that route?
because
you've got a really good opinions. You've got, you know, an honest man. You're an honest broker.
Well, who
bring a
knows?
lot.
I mean, one of the real problems, I think, of local government is it became politicised. Far better if it was actually independent folk, as to a degree it would have been. But there's always been sort of, you know, are you a liberal in attitude, or you're a centralist, or you're a control freak?
Really?
Yeah, pretty much. But on the health matters, I mean, if we were to look at the last several meetings I've been to, the real key one, I think, is the new organisation that spends our money. And if you take on board the I think Ipswich, we are now a part of Ipswich, so our geographical area is Suffolk Coastal, joined with Ipswich Borough. Right. So you've got a mix of urban and rural to deliver. And we're virtually back to the East Suffolk configuration, which is what we had back in 1974. So things go full circle.
Yeah.
Some people, I think there's a problem. The real problem is, what is the appropriate scale for a particular service?
Right.
So we all need very good community care, don't we? We need district nurses, we need community hospitals.
It's a heck of a big job.
It's a massive job.
Massive
Absolutely
job.
massive
To get that
job.
right. You're never going to please everybody, are
No,
you?
you're
Are
not.
you?
No. But in our area, that's now been privatised. And you're probably not aware of it. But it has been. It was privatised.
What has been privatised? Say that again.
The folk who now operate, own and receive the money for delivering that service for district nurses, community hospitals, are a private company.
Really? I was told this, as I said to you earlier, many years ago, that the NHS was going to be privatised in parts.
Well,
and I was shocked by that.
I mean, there is a difficulty as to what is privatised, because we're coming into a whole new recommissioning of existing services, and basically what you have is a service that can be specifically identified is obliged to go for open tender, and anybody can tender for it.
Right.
But you've been around long enough to know that there are some companies who have massive departments who spend all their days just looking for and submitting tenders. So their big forte in life is being very good at delivering tenders. Now, whether they're very good at delivering the service that they might get is the bit where it all falls down, because once this becomes a privately delivered service, they are no longer publicly accountable for spending public money.
That's really scary stuff. I don't know, viewers, if you're aware of all of this, and if you've got... we're going to run out of time soon, because I've only got half an hour, and as you can tell, Mike is absolutely fascinating and has such in-depth information on everything.
Oh, if only that were true. But I think that the bit about tendering is the process is very complicated. It's difficult for, say, a group of, say, district nurses in an area to say, oh, we could do that. We know what's needed. We know our patients. We know what, whatever. For them to actually get together and have the commercial nous to put that as a bid.
Tendering is an art.
It is, but the art is fine. And the difficulty that we have in the whole of this process is this nice Weasley word, commercial confidentiality. So if you're a private provider, you can hide behind that if you're not delivering what you should have been delivering. But if you're a publicly employed, a real part of the NHS, every particular detail can be gone into. So my view is that if you, as an organisation, are going to tender and provide a public service, then you should be totally transparent. And if you don't wish to be totally transparent, don't tender.
But by the same token, I want my district nurses to be district nurses.
Yes.
I don't want them to have to become experts at tendering. They shouldn't have to do that. They're our district nurses.
Yeah, but
so I don't like all of that.
I mean, you have to go all the way back to sort of the Blair era, where he was could find no way in which he could motivate a sort of a labour force of about 1.7 million people.
Bring back the matrons.
Yes. Yeah, that certainly works.
That was the worst thing I ever did, get rid of matrons.
Yeah, well, bring back cooperation rather than conflict, because what you're introducing is conflict, and you've got mixed budgets, so who's going to pay for it? That guy with his budget or me? I will spend all my effort not delivering the service, but making sure I keep my budget. So you get all of that. But what you need...
But we're going to run out of time. I want to ask you something.
What I just wanted to do was to share with your viewer what the priorities are in the area in which they live, that the clinical commissioning group of Ipswich
You're going to give me a bullet.
Yeah, I'm just going to give you whatever. What they're saying, these are their priorities: to promote self-care. So that means you, dear patient, will have to look after yourself where you can. To ensure high quality local services, and they put a caveat where possible. That sort of is the cop-out clause. To improve the health of the need, so that one would assume are those who are in more desperate need, they need to be able to, so this is the equality of provision bit, yes? To improve health and educational attainment for children and young people. I don't quite know why that sits in there at all at that point. To improve access to mental health services. Now, mental health is getting one hell of a hammering currently. A 20% reduction in funding, major closure of beds. To improve outcome for patients with diabetes to above national average. Well, you would expect to do that anyway, wouldn't you? To improve care for frail, elderly individuals because of our demographic. That's what we've been saying for the last 10 years.
Well, then that's good.
But this is the one that perhaps people might find not odd, but something that we assume would happen anyway. to allow patients to die with dignity and compassion and choose their place of death. So that's your 7th.
Well, but it's a lovely list.
Oh, it is, yeah.
If you look, you're looking deeper into it, but on the face of it, it's, you know, you hope that that's what's going to happen.
Well, you know, I'm
Yeah.
surprised we've not got an emphasis on cancer and stroke and heart, because those are the big killers, aren't they?
Oh,
And then that's where you'd have thought, whatever. But this is across the piece, and there are projects to do that, and perhaps at a later stage we may be able to look into some of those.
yeah, I think
But
so.
the
But I'm going to have to close
Yes,
it
you
soon
are.
because, one, I want to say to our viewers, if you would like to know more, please go onto our website, which is www.felixstowetv.co.uk, and please leave us a message. And if you'd love Mike to come back and explain in more depth, because I've really pushed you, haven't I? And kept you. There's so much more that could be said. And if you'd like to know, please contact us and please come onto our website.
Equally, what they could do, if they're particularly interested, is join an organisation called Health Watch, which is actually the voice that you and I as a patient have. Its membership is somewhere around 2,000, and when you consider that's less than 1% of those that they represent, that number really needs to rise.
Well, that's a good thought. How would they do that?
Health Watch is available to you. They sent me some interesting information today, but again, they've got a website, as everybody does. People don't talk to anybody anymore. But that's at www.healthwatchsuffolk, all a continuous, .co.uk, and they do have a telephone number. It's 01449 703 949, and they live in Needham Market, so they're not a million miles away.
I hope that's very helpful. Thank you very much for
Thank
that.
you, my flower.
Thank you.
You
It's
enjoy
lovely
today,
to see you today.
and the sun will come.
Yeah. If you told me that, I believe it. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you. Bye-bye.